Waiters of Reddit, what fucked up shit have you overheard while waiting tables? Buddy, maybe let's not antagonize the flock of Canadian geese. Aces. If you're a person who dates someone who talks to other people like that, you are a horrible person. Or that was good of you. I was delivering food to a large table that looked like they were on a family reunion vacation when I overheard a grandpa asking one of the younger, 12 or 13, grandchildren if they had fun that day. The kid responded with, "Fuck you grandpa, I can't wait until you die." I almost dropped all the plates in shock. What the fuck? What was the aftermath of that? The grandpa just shook his head disappointed. The parents didn't really care. Was the dad a NASCAR driver? Was the son's name Walker or Texas Ranger? And did anyone at the table say shake and bake or I wanna go fast? In a Witherspoons, and there was a slight lull in the Friday night noise, and a buddy and I overheard a girl say, "Well, technically he isn't my brother, so I shagged him," to which her friend replied, "But you have the same dad." Well, it's all relative. Well, she's half right. I overheard a customer talking about someone coming and being so much fun. I assumed she was pregnant because she seemed to be showing a bit. I decided midway through the dinner to congratulate her on being pregnant. To my horror, she said, "I am not pregnant." I felt horrible. I told my manager, who camped their meals, and I hid in the back for the rest of their dinner. Push comes to shove, she refused to let the manager comp her meal and left me a $20 tip with a note that said I was kidding, I'm due in July. That is fucking hilarious. What a good sport on her part. Huh, I tell you what, I've made the wrong assumption twice. One later bitched at me and threatened my life. The other cried real tears of pain and I felt terrible. So unless I physically see the baby crowning, I keep my congratulations to myself these days. Yeah, my buddy had a hernia that literally made her look 9 months pregnant. She was borderline ready to kill the next one to ask when she was due by the time she finally could have surgery to correct it. Had a guy confess to banging his sister when I brought their drinks to them. It was an anniversary. I guess he thought it would be the least likely place for her to cause a scene. She caused a scene. Aha. If I break this news to her in public, she can't get upset. Always baffles me why people think breaking up with your so in public is a good idea. They may be slightly less likely to cause a scene, but if they do, it's so much worse. A friend of mine broke up with a girlfriend that was way deeper into the relationship than he at a nice restaurant. He decided the best time to do this was before dinner arrived, but after they ordered. Also, she drove. He's a dumbass. Nah, you're looking at this all wrong. It's not about her getting upset because you're never gonna avoid that tidbit. It's about having witnesses to testify when she's being tried for your murder instead of you accidentally eating something with peanuts in it while she's in the bath and coincidentally unable to hear downstairs. Edit. A letter. Not a fan of public drama, but this would be hard for me to chill long enough to drag him outside to slice him up verbally. My sister is also prettier than me. There's drama that there is being legitimately enraged beyond polite control. Like if I'm at a restaurant and somebody at a table causes a scene about their shrimp being overcooked, I'm thinking take that drama somewhere else. But if the scene is about, "Oh hey babe, I fucked your sister," I'm thinking say your piece lady. Nobody here blames you. My wife and I keep bees as a hobby. Pretty much the grossest thing you need to do as part of this is occasionally you need to scrape cells off a frame. Particularly drone cells. Basically, you take a scraper and scrape the wax, but the larva pupa plus juices etc. just squirt out everywhere. They're thick, white, and disgusting. I was holding the frame and my wife was scraping and it sprayed all over her face and right into her mouth. She was describing the experience to me when the waitress walked over and definitely got a very different interpretation about thick white stuff right in my face and mouth. I was busting this table and I can hear these two guys speaking in Vietnamese to each other. One asks the other what they think about me. The guy responds and said, "I'm cute but I have a flat chest." Also, in my defense, we had to wear these oversized unisex shirts that was not flattering. But anyways, I just keep doing what I'm doing and continue on. When they came to the register to pay, one asked me what nationality I was and I smiled and said I'm Vietnamese. They looked shocked. Then asked me if I spoke it, which I responded I did. Then he asked me in Vietnamese if I'm understanding him right now and I responded back in Viet that yes I do. They didn't say anything else and left. We had a couple who would come in regularly and always asked to be seated in my co-workers section. They were probably in their 60s and were always really affectionate and cute with each other. My coworker would joke around with them all the time. One day the man came in with a different woman than usual, and my coworker jokingly told him, "Ooh, you're in trouble. I'm going to tell your wife you were here with another woman." Woman said, "Excuse me, I am his wife. Who the fuck has he been coming here with?" Dead awkward silence while she death glares at her extremely uncomfortable looking husband. My coworker just turned around and walked away. Honestly, he shouldn't have brought them both to the same restaurant where he was a regular. It's just idiotic. Of course, the waiter who always jokes with you is going to come up and joke and probably even ask where the wife is at. So dumb. He shouldn't have brought them both to the same restaurant. How could he make such a rookie mistake in his 60s? That's fucking awful. Poor kid. Girlfriend sounds jealous of the daughter. Imo. I have a regular customer in his 70s who brings his wife and girlfriend on alternating weeks. Apparently the wife doesn't know about the girlfriend, since he tips extra on the girlfriend weeks to keep it quiet. Still makes me feel skeevy as fuck. This happened to me. Bartender for 17 years. This one Sunday night a guy and his wife come in. He is here a lot with her too. They always had Red Label and sodas and try different things on the menu. Hotel bar is right next to the dining room, but I'm the only person that works in the bar, so I have to serve food too. About halfway through their meal I check on them and tell them I like it when they come in because it helps me learn the menu, since they try many different things. She looks at him and says, "You've been here before?" He says, "No, never." A little while later he catches me in the hallway and yells at me for mentioning he's been here before. I say, "You two always come here." He says, "You idiot. That's my wife. The other girl I bring is my girlfriend." He dates a girl that look like his wife and drinks the same scotch and sodas as his wife, and brings his wife to the same hotel bar as he brings his GF, and I'm the idiot. Lol. Edit. Thank you everyone that upvoted me. This is amazing. I've never had so many people even read any of my posts before. I am humbled. Thank you. Lol, the opposite happened to me. My boyfriend went to this small bar with his female friend of a different race. Very obviously different girl, before taking me there. When we went there together a few days later, the bartender tried to sell him out, but I already knew about him coming with his friend. It was pretty awkward. Audible gasp. Middle-aged couple on what seemed like an early-ish date. Hand them the machine to pay at the end. She takes it. The machine gives her the option to tap her card or insert it. She puts on a voice, and looks at him. Oh, wow. It's asking me if I want to tap or insert. Should I tap or insert? He smiles, and I'm just standing there. I can't even pretend not to be paying attention. I'm a foot away and was just talking to them. I guess I'll just tap, but I really would rather insert. She finally hands the machine back to me. It takes about 3 weeks to print out the damn receipt, and I leave with a "Thanks for coming in, have a great night, thanks, bye." Older couple at Bob Evans. I just wish I could die already. I know, dear. Edit. Thank you, kind Redditor. What does gold do, lol? My pop just turned 97. In his words, he feels God still needs him to do something because he's otherwise not sure why he's still here. It's heartbreaking watching such a great guy slowly wind down, get more frail. He's so tired and gets irritable very easy. I can't imagine what it's like for himself. Can he do some kind of oral history interview? This may be an odd suggestion, lol, but I work for an oral history archive and we're always looking for old people to interview. I bet he has amazing stories. If he is 97, he probably fought in WWII, in which case he would qualify for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. If so, he should definitely do that. Honestly, this sounds like a conversation I would have with my so, except we're in our early 20s. Same, except I don't have an so. Older couple at Bob Evans. Are there other kinds of people that go to Bob Evans? Hey, my college roommate and I went together a lot. Their breakfast is awesome. I am a server at a small hall that runs a restaurant bar out of the basement in a small, rural community. One night, after almost all of the patrons had left, an old man shuffles up to the serving area, looks left and right, leans in and says, "All old people have AIDS." He pauses, then says, "Hearing aids, band-aids, and Rolaids." He cackles, then shuffles away. Our Granda jokes, "Dad, let's get you back to the home now." When I was a waiter, people often pretended that I wasn't there. The stories they told were crazy and personal. One woman at a table of 6 lunching ladies told the story of how her husband was recently prescribed Viagra. He took it like a vitamin 1 pill every morning. He kept having erections at work and didn't understand why. I'd like to see what this man's secretary looks like. This right here. People often misunderstand how Viagra works. It won't give you a boner if you're not aroused. It just makes you more able to get a boner when you want one. 6 lunching ladies. 5 awkward boners. 4 clucking tongues. 3 nervous giggles. 2 oh my stars. And an old lady laughing hysterically. I like my women like I like my whiskey. 15 years old with just a little bit of coke. 2 random dudes at the bar. I'm not saying you can't date him. I just don't want you fucking some Negro in my house. Dad talking to his daughter with the rest of the family present. And I had a table of nurses who were describing in detail a penectomy they had to perform on an 85-year-old man. I overheard a guy on a date, at the table next to ours, trying to impress the girl by saying that he loved swing dancing, and that maybe they should check out that Swinging Richard's place sometime. Their waitress was in earshot and quickly explained to him that Swinging Richard's was not that kind of dance club. It's of the male nudity variety. Edit. OMG. Yes people. This is in Atlanta. Stop asking. Do Swinging Richards as in swinging dicks as in swinging penises. The dad should have told his girlfriend to leave his kid alone. If the person you're dating says that sort of thing to your kid, and you don't say anything and keep dating them, you're a terrible parent. Buddy, it's probably better to not try and eat the pencils. After graduating college I went on vacation with my dad to Greece. My Greek isn't very good so I spent as much time as I could with my cousins all roughly my age, who wanted to practice their English on me. My one cousin, Nico, I think. Let's just assume they were all named Nico. Nico says in English you say your pout so is your dick. But dick is also a man's name. Why is this? So I try to explain that dick is short for Richard, and I think that it's just like a colloquialism similar to calling it a little man. Nico replies so if I am referring to my pout so I can call it my Richard absolutely. Later that week we are at a bar that has professional belly dancers performing, and a different cousin, Nico, leans over to me and says this girl, the dancer, I like her very much. I want to give to her my Richard. This is like a cross between Mamma Mia and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. A couple used to come into my work, probably mid-50s. They would request to sit somewhere private so she could proceed to jerk him off under the table and have him come in a glass. We obviously didn't allow this, nor realize it, until we actually saw the glass. They were already gone by then. The next time they came in we didn't realize it as them and got hit again. Finally the third time we knew, sat them in the bar area where you're pretty much on a display for 50-300 people. They requested to sit somewhere more private and we point blank told them absolutely not. They stopped returning after that. So how long did someone examine the cum glass before realizing it was a cum glass? It was more like you same size sitters followed by man they're really kind of going at it back there. Is she kind of jerking him off through his pants? No that can't be. Finally ending with, is that, did they? Oh my god. Man. Reddit has taught me about cum glasses, cum boxes, cum walls, and cum socks. I've learned so much. Also, I have really started appreciating the convenience of a female orgasm. WTF. I used to be a manager at a Pizza Hut. Big extended redneck family comes in, with parents and kids. Standard visit. And they stood up to leave when 2 of the guys started yelling at each other. Their wives GFS got in on it and turned it up a notch by getting in a vicious slap fight. Best part, both of the women were holding babies at the time. I used to wait tables at a Waffle House. One morning, around 6 AM, I had an older gentleman come in and sit. I came up to take his drink order, like usual, asking how he was and such. His response was, with tear-filled eyes, I just buried my wife. I had to pause for a second to collect myself, because it kinda hit me hard. First wife passed away just over 10 years ago. Couple of years ago my boss at the time asked me offhandedly, do you still miss her? Every day boss. Every day. It gets better but those first months were hard. Not a waiter, but a barista. I once overheard two teenage girls waiting on their drinks talking about whether or not they think that charges would be pressed against them for beating up a developmentally disabled girl. Apparently they think they won't because she deserved it. God, I hope non-Reddit karma is real. I work in a pretty big tourist beach town. An older couple comes in one night. Super nice. They were there for a while. Pretty much until close. I come by to ask if they need anything. Actually, my wife and I were talking, and since it's our last night here, we wanted to know if you would be interested in joining us back at our hotel room. I smiled, told them thanks but no thanks, but have a nice rest of your trip. They left me a hefty tip and went on their way. Never hurts to ask. I was once out in the woods down by the river on an early Sunday morning before the sun was up checking traps for a mammalogy class. There was an older gentleman sitting in his car when I was walking out of the woods and he asked me what I was up to and stuff, and as I'm walking away he says, "Would you like to get your dick sucked?" I told him no thank you and kept walking until I was out of sight and then ran to my car. He wasn't threatening or anything, but I think asking in that environment was a little harmful and made me very uncomfortable. Where else would one go for anonymous blowjobs? It must work sometimes. He didn't want one, he wanted to give one. I imagine that if I'd gone for it though, when he was done he would have wanted me to reciprocate. That's where they get ya. Gotta read the fine print. Dude, what environment doesn't freak you out? I was a maintenance worker for a hotel when I was 19. There was some Baptist priest convention going on, so a bunch of them were staying there. I get a call to go check on a light that stopped working in someone's room. I get there and the guy is super old but dressed up like they do. Says he's with the convention. Asks me a bunch of questions about school and if I can afford it. Yada yada. The whole while I am making sure the switch works. Lamp is plugged in. No open parts in the wire. Then I find it. Bulb was unscrewed a bit. Let him know as I start walking out and this triggers the question. He says he will give me money for school if I put my penis in his mouth. His shaky hand is pointing to his mouth. I'll never get the image out of my mind. It scared the hell out of me then. I ran. Makes me hard as hell when I think about it now though. That last line. Can't tell if a joke or. Glad to hear they were polite, accepted your no, and still left a big tip. Considerate swingers. You miss every shot you don't take. A little girl's. Couldn't be older than 10. Dad's drunk girlfriend calling her fat piece of shit. Not pretty enough, etc. When they ordered she asked for a baked potato and the girlfriend said, "Really? Do you really need that potato?" Haley, the little girl was holding back tears all night. I messed up her order and brought her the potato. Then I brought her a free dessert to make up for the mistake. Just to piss off the drunk girlfriend. Fuck me. My mom and my grandma both used to do this to me from about age 11 until I moved out. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Do you need that?" Insert whatever I was having. It was terrible. And I mean, I was kind of fat, but it only made things worse. Not only that, but now I'm 27, relatively healthy. I have a little more weight to lose but not much, and I take good care of myself. But I'm absolutely incapable of not feeling huge in spite of how many times I've had to go buy smaller clothes or whatever. It impacts everything in my life all of the time. I don't want to go eat. I don't want to walk from my car to my apartment carrying fast food on the occasions that I do have it because I'm scared that my neighbors will think I'm a gross pig. Fuck this lady. There are like 100 different ways to make your kids eat healthier without bullying them. Not a waiter, but was sitting next to a booth of people at a restaurant having the most awkward exchange of words. Imagine two very Italian older guys with the most stereotypical South Philadelphian accent possible. Guy 1. Accidentally spills iced tea on table. Guy 2. It's all over me. Guy 1. I'm sorry, it was an accident. I'm sorry. Guy 2. But, it's all over me. Guy 1. I said I'm sorry, it was an accident. Guy 2. Waitress comes over to help. Guy 2. Napkins please. Butterfingers over here spilled this all over me. Guy 1. You're embarrassing me. Guy 2. You're embarrassing me. Guy 2. I'm embarrassing you? You wanna take this outside? They stand up. Guy 1. No, you're like a brother to me. Guy 2. Guy 2. Come here. They shake hands and hug. I literally could not help but to keep looking over, and my uncle was begging me to stop staring because he thought they were actually going to escalate into a fight. It was so weird, I'll never forget it. Over equals over. Tried emphasizing how hard the accents were. Edit. Spelling. You saw some of the last of the dying kind of the colorful Italian mobsters. Two top at a pretty restaurant on the lake. Married couple obviously on the rocks. The guy quite obviously wanted to stay together and she was having none of it. Hushed arguing at the table the entire meal. As I am dropping the check he asks, "What about the baby?" She replies, "You don't have to worry about that. It's not yours," and storms off. Poor guy was weeping when I returned with the credit card slips. Late one night I had this couple who were maybe in their late 30s. The guy looked a little like a roid head and had a lot of tattoos. Tough looking guy. From the moment they came in, the woman was crying the whole time. Not like a little bit crying, but straight up bawling. She hadn't talked to me the entire time, but the guy was very chatty. He explained to me how he had just found out that he only had a few months left alive and how she, his angel, was gonna take care of his boy for him and all this shit. Anyway, I felt pretty genuinely bad cause that's a pretty fucked up thing to hear. Then I saw them coming again over a year and a half later, acting totally normal. They didn't remember me, but how do you forget the face of someone that told you they were dying? My theory is that he was abusive and was making up some cover story as to why she was crying that night. Either that or he miraculously survived without looking sickly at all, which in that case good on him. The first thing I thought when reading this was that they were fishing for a free pity meal. You didn't at least ask, "Hey, did you die?" I have no idea why, but I feel like he killed her cat earlier or something. One time on my way home from a date I was searching for the girl's house to return her to. All the houses looked the same, so I asked her, "Okay, which one's yours?" She points at one a few ahead. To clarify things I ask her, "You mean the one with a dead cat on the driveway?" She started bawling. Me with the fucking Asperger's. What? Why are you crying? Is something wrong? She leaves the car and slams the door. It occurred to me on the way home, that was her fucking cat. This isn't really fucked up, but it's definitely the time I said WTF the hardest. Couple at the table. I greet them. Get drinks. Everything is normal. Lady's voice is a little hoarse but not too bad. Like maybe she's a teacher and she was lecturing all day. I don't know. So they're ready to order food and the conversation goes like this. Keep in mind that I can hear every word that both of them said. Girl, are you going to order for me? Guy, oh, what do you want? Girl, big sigh, the house salad. Guy, to me, she'll have a house salad. Girl, no egg. Guy, to me, no egg. Me, to both of them because I'm so confused. What kind of dressing for the salad? Guy, looks at girl. Girl, big sigh, ranch on the side. Guy, to me, ranch on the side. He ordered normally and I finished out the table with no other notable incidents. I think about this all the time. Why did she make him be the middleman when I could hear everything she said? Was this a first date? Did it last? I love that he was just as confused as I was. Edit. Okay, I get it. She could have anxiety. She was pretty rude about it though. Please stop telling me that she could have anxiety. I understand. That could very well be anxiety related. My wife has terrible anxiety when we're out in public. I often order for her when I know what she wants. Although having been together as long as we have, I generally try to anticipate all the side questions, dressings, etc. in advance. It sucks. However, she's been getting better. I was a pretty big pothead years ago. Smoked way too much weed and was having a mild panic attack in a mall. Exact same thing as you described. I had to have my buddy order me food at Johnny Rockets. I'm cringing thinking about it. Ex-waiter. I'm walking down a long hallway carrying a tray of food. A kid comes running from an perpendicular hallway and runs face first into the wall without putting his hands up. He starts crying. The dad walks behind him very calmly and kneels down and says, "Buddy, you just can't go running into walls." I muffled my immediate laugh with my hand. It brought tears to my eyes. Sound advice there. Although the calmness of the situation maybe implies it's not the first time something like this has happened. This is actually why it was so funny to me. I wondered how the day went. "Hey bud, I need you to not sit upside down in the car seat. Buddy, let's not drink motor oil anymore. I have 2 boys. I can confirm that this is how most days go." He's right. You know. Alright babe, let's get out of here. This dick ain't gonna suck itself, says attractive early 30s woman to sew. I have said this to my husband before when leaving a restaurant. If someone heard it, I hope they got a good laugh out of it. It was amazing to hear across the bar and remains legendary to this day in my head. Haha. Cheers. A real adouchy 15-year-old guy was sitting at a booth with two similarly aged girls. I think he was trying to show off to them. He was being extremely loud, obnoxious, shouting inappropriate stuff across the restaurant, and it was a fairly slow night so everyone could hear everything he was saying. He had a Justin Bieber haircut and was basically behaving like one of those spoiled, full of themselves little shitheads you see on YouTube. While sitting in the booth next to them was a young couple in their mid-20s. They were really nice and polite. I remember talking to them. The guy was in the military and was having a nice romantic dinner with his wife. I mentioned to the manager that the kid was being very inappropriate and causing disruptions, but he wouldn't do anything about it. So about 15 minutes after that little shithead and his two girlfriends sit down, the military dude gets up, leans down at the kid's table and tells him, I'm paraphrasing, "We are trying to celebrate our anniversary at the booth next to you. You need to quiet down and learn some manners or I'm gonna take you outside and beat the shit out of you." Kid went so red in the face and didn't make a peep the rest of the night. I thanked the military guy for putting the kid in his place before they left. I've been waiting tables for a little over a decade now, and I definitely have some favorites. I once had to wait on a table where the mother and father were trying to calmly explain that they were getting a divorce to their 8-10-year-old son. They started the conversation before the appetizers even hit the table, crying by the time the entrees came, and still stayed for dessert. The little boy kept asking if he did anything wrong. So uncomfortable. I used to work at a nice bar in a really nice part of town, so a bunch of stories there. I was propositioned by a woman and her husband, definitely old enough to buy my parents, more than once. One table had two couples negotiating a swingers contract. Overheard a couple discussing pricing for the evening, which wasn't surprising. She was stunning and he was about 40 years older than her. The worst, though, is waiting on a table where you just know some kind of abuse is regularly occurring. I listened to this 20-something guy tell his girlfriend that, because she didn't want to order what he told her to, she was a selfish bitch and he would fix her attitude later. I told my managers what I overheard, but because he didn't do anything while in the restaurant, there really wasn't much we could do. Discreetly handing them a number to a women's shelter is the way to go with that. My girlfriend waits tables. One time a creepy man said to her, when I have sex with my wife, I think of you instead. The wife sitting at the table didn't seem bothered by this fact. I also bought my girlfriend pepper spray and a taser soon after. I know you couldn't say it, but the perfect reply would have been, I wonder who she'll be thinking of. Not really fucked up, but by far the best conversation I have ever overheard was a table of 3, a Russian woman and 2 gay men. They happened to be seated at the table closest to the serving station, allowing me to hear everything between taking care of my other tables. One of the men was introducing his fiancée to his ex-wife, who he had mail ordered. Apparently, he found out into this first serious relationship with a woman that he was gay. They parted amicably after she was awarded citizenship. He began to date men and she started a career. More of a what the fuck moment than a fucked up one. An American Tale. Natalia moves west. That's called a win-win-win scenario. Not a waiter but overheard on the table across from mine, in the strongest Welsh accent you can imagine. What you mean I don't loves you? I fucks you and I buys you chips, comma. Chips are what we call fries in the UK. Seems like love to me. This thread has been making me sad and making me laugh. But you just gave me a new slogan. While bartending, a man once told me he was going to kill his boss because an accident at the cement plant killed his friend, and nothing was done to fix the problem. I also had a guy come to the bar, order a bottle of O'Dowell's non-alcoholic beer and a shot of vodka. He did this several times and would stand between the bar and his table and pour the vodka in the beer, then go back to his table. Edit. For those of you questioning if this was a family member of yours, I will tell you this was 1997ish in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I wonder if the second guy was trying to convince the people he was with that he was sober. Otherwise, Maybe he liked the taste. That's pretty fucked if true. Did the first guy ever actually do it? No, I don't think he ever killed his boss, but he sure did like showing me the knife he was going to use. Not sure why he hid the vodka, and me being 21 and liking the tip money wasn't about to offend him and ask. Remember, the customer with the knife is always right. Was curious about the second, so I tried it. I work for an AB distributor, so owls and vodka are always around. Absolutely disgusting. You really have to be an alcoholic to buy that. Recovering alcoholic trying to hide his relapse? Most likely just trying to hide his drinking. From somebody there. Don't know why, and I was 21, so I didn't ask him. I feel like coffee would be really bad for a baby. Was waiting a table a couple days ago for a group of older ladies. While I was walking back to the kitchen, I overheard one of them say, "You don't know what it's like to be married to such a fucking ugly man," and then said something about waiting for him to die so she'll gain his money. It shook me up inside. People are inherently meaner when it impresses others. I'm always amazed at what horrible things people will say when they have an audience. The number of people I've seen fired because they had to entertain their friends. I sat at a table of 3, a mom, her daughter, and grandma. After sitting, grandma left to order spaghetti at the Italian place next door. Mom seemed to be having an existential crisis. I asked her what she wanted to drink. "I don't know," she said. "Can I get you some water?" I asked. "I don't know. Do you want me to come back later?" "I'm not sure." The daughter, who was getting impatient, stood up on her chair. "Hey," she said, "I'll have you know, I want apples. But first I have to get you something to drink. Would you like some water?" "I want apples." Grandma ate Italian food in silence while mom stared at a menu for an hour and a half, and the daughter ate apples. When they finished, mom paid, and they left. She tipped well, considering all they bought was $50 worth of apple slices. TLDR. I sat and waited on a living Wes Anderson movie. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard, honestly. Mom probably didn't have the money to pay for. Grandma probably didn't want to invite them. She didn't look like she was hurting for money. The restaurant was in the nice part of town. She looked like she had been reading a lot of Nietzsche. I was at the bar, not waiting tables, but I have two. The first was a couple that sat down directly in front of where I was washing glasses. This was during the NBA finals, so I thought it was a bit odd they seemed so sad while everyone else was enjoying the game. They spent at least 4 hours there, and from what I was able to hear they were discussing having another kid to fix their relationship. I guess she had cheated on him because she felt empty but didn't want to end their relationship as they already had kids together. The guy was clearly very upset but said he'd support her if this is what she wanted. The other was last week during a huge fundraiser we hosted. A group of 3 or 4 ladies were noticeably uncomfortable, and when I asked if they were okay they told me that one of them had a stalker who constantly shows up at her house, work, etc., and calls her repeatedly. He just showed up to the bar. She had threatened to call the police if he didn't leave her alone. So what did he do? Naturally, he bought her a drink as an apology. It's sad that so many people think having a child will magically fix their relationship problems. Unfair to that child too. This seems like such a common sense thing, and I can't understand why people keep doing it. Adding more stress to your already strained relationship won't make it better. And don't put the responsibility of saving your marriage on the shoulders of a newborn. What a shitty thing to do. This failed marriage is on you now, Junior. I should hope at that point you notified your manager and asked the guy, from number 2, to leave the premises. Yes, he was kicked out shortly after. Today's special, justice. Well, I was a manager of a restaurant for a few years. Not that long ago, there was this particular woman that came in from time to time, always with 2 boys around 13 or 14 years old. She wasn't unattractive exactly. Boo, there was something about the way she eyed me up that even as a man, made me uncomfortable. I was sitting with a couple regulars at a bar top, and she and the 2 boys were at the table behind me. My back was to hers. One of the boys gets up to go to the bathroom. I assumed they were both her sons, but after the one boy left, I heard this exchange. "Woman, we've got to be more careful. He almost walked in on us this morning." Boy, "I know. I'm sorry." Woman, "We can talk about it tonight after he falls asleep." SHHH. Here he comes. Anyway, at the time I assumed maybe they were planning a party or something. My mind definitely did not go to someplace sinister. Turns out it should have. She was a teacher for a local school, and apparently the boy she was talking to was a friend of her son's. They knew each other from church. The boy told one of the church elders, I think that's what they were called, Jehovah's Witnesses, that he and she were having a sexual relationship. Turns out it had been going on for a year or more and they had sex 40+ times. She was sentenced to 6 years. It was really bizarre. Not overheard but saw when I bust tables in high school. I watched someone change a poopy baby diaper directly on the vinyl booth seat, then leave the poop smeared wipes and poop-filled diaper on a plate on the table. Edit. This was 20 years ago but there were cabinets in both single-person bathrooms that were acceptable baby changing areas. Even if there weren't, you can't leave actual shit on a plate in a room where you are eating. Edit. They didn't leave. They all kept eating next to the openly displayed poop wipes. Parents who are commenting that this is fine, I hope you are fine with your small children getting other children's fecal matter on themselves and in their food. Doing this as a protest for adequate changing facilities is not reasonable and the person who has to clean it up is not even going to be able to report it to their boss if they want to keep their terrible job. If you do this, you are disgusting. I saw someone do this same thing at a fancy pizza place and was blown away. So disgusting. A fancy pizza place. Tell me more about this. Woman. Smelling the fish that another table had ordered. Oh god. What's that gross fish smell? Man. Close your legs. I picked my jaw up off the floor and ran away. She screamed at him and made him apologize to me. Seems to me like he should have apologized to her but okay. I worked in a nursing home and had a patient who hated bathing. One time when transferring her to her bed she exclaimed, "We're having fish for dinner." My grandpa used to do stuff similar to this to random people to embarrass the people around us. Not my grandma or us or anything. Maybe he was just trying to get a reaction out of you. One time he asked the waitress if they took Federal Reserve notes. She said she didn't know and that she'd have to ask someone. Manager and waitress come back. He tells them he needs to pay in the notes and that's all he has. Next thing you know the manager is on the phone with some higher up. After 10 or so minutes the waitress and manager come back and shamefully say that they do in fact take cash. My grandpa laughed so hard he had everyone in the vicinity laughing. He tried to tip them both a 20 but the manager refused so the waitress got $40 as a tip. This was in 2002 and she only served her seniors and a child. Definitely made really good money for that hour of fuckery. Just the other night, had a 6-top, 2 adults, 4 kids, apparently talking about the afterlife. They stayed almost an hour after close so I was right there with them in these thoughts. There was an older girl around 11-12 who said she wasn't scared of death and figured that once you die, that's it, you're gone. I was wiping tables around them as this was going on, so I missed the middle part here. I came back to the smallest girl, around 6-7, looking at her dad with big eyes and wailing, "You lied to me, Daddy." So I'm guessing that's how she found out heaven was something some believe in and some don't. At like 12:30 AM, in a closed down restaurant. That's when you chime in, well if you were good, you go to heaven. But if you were bad, you go work in a restaurant where inconsiderate people hang out an hour past close and keep you there to listen to their asinine conversations. If hell is personalized to every person's worst nightmare, then mine is eternally working in the service industry. I worked at a restaurant where you pay at the table and if you wanted a receipt, the server would go print it out and bring it back to you. I was waiting on a woman who every other server refused to deal with because she was such a hassle. She came in all the time, complained about everything, basically made up her own menu items, etc. At the end of the meal when she was paying I asked if she needed a receipt. She said yes because she wanted proof she was here at this time in case she was accused of murder that night. Probably not the weirdest but the first one that comes to mind. This was over 10 years ago and I had no idea what swinging and wife swapping was. Working breakfast fairly early at a downtown hotel in a big city. Husband is clearly upset and wife is acting half sheepish, half annoyed, and they'd instantly get very quiet whenever anyone approached. Their conversation was clearly heated and the restaurant was pretty empty with high ceilings and marble walls. Old bank, so even slightly raised voices carried. I'm walking towards the table and they didn't see me coming. Husband, how could I not be upset? You let him fuck your ass. Why did we even talk about rules if they don't matter? Dart. Couples fighting at breakfast on Saturday or Sunday morning after a night of debauchery was always pretty common. But this was the only time I ever heard a fight about unsanctioned ass fucking with a third party. Nothing like an unsanctioned ass fucking to ruin a day. 15-yard penalty first down. Illegal cock in the back. Edit. Holy shit. Thanks, kind stranger. Leading with the head. Personal foul. Man, you give a mouse a cookie, they're gonna want a stranger's cock in their ass while their husband watches in a somewhat decent hotel room that they agreed on splitting the cost of with the guest. Rules are important. Absolutely true. In the swinging community, hard lines are to be known and respected more than anything. 2015. Soft swap only 2016. No coming in the other party 2017. No anal 2018. Nah, have fun. I'm staying home tonight. Tell them hello and take pictures. That guy is right. You can't explore the boundaries of your relationship if you can't trust your partner to respect agreed upon boundaries in the first place. Party of 5 or 6. It's a group of friends having dinner. In walks a clown. Clown starts randomly walking around the restaurant doing balloon animals for kids and shit like that. I have no idea what the fuck is going on. We didn't hire this guy. He walks over to the table of 5 or 6 and selects a man from the table to perform a magic trick for. He did the trick. A small flash of smoke and fire happens and then magically there is an engagement ring on a robe. The man takes the ring and the woman gets on her knees and asks the man to marry her. The man says no, tells her to get up and they continue dinner. This table now has the attention of the entire restaurant, like 300-400 people on our busiest night. Everybody just turned away and started awkwardly eating like nothing happened. I feel like you have to 110% sure they will say yes if you are going to do such a public proposal especially one that involves a clown. Better be damn near a certainty. If the guy would have been me, the relationship would have ended right then and there. Remember when I proposed to you? With that romantic clown? Fuck clowns. Romantic clown. I'm imagining a clown in a dimly lit room with a tux and a real deep voice. What the fuck, man? Miso threatened me with violence if I ever even considered public proposal. Will you marry me and make me the happiest so in the restaurant? Punches you in the face. Proposing via a clown is a fucking joke. When my friend says we should go and watch the new It movie, GIF on the webpage, I heard a little girl say excuse me. As soon as I got to the table, I thought she was going to ask a question, so I said yes mom, and she said oh nothing, I just farted. It was a slow Tuesday night behind the bar. I had one of my new guests come in. I had tended on him a few times, seemed like a super nice guy, tipped well, drank well and ate well. On this particular night a woman came and sat down next to him. They seemed to know each other pretty well. So I'm thinking work buddies because I knew he didn't have a girlfriend. Honestly I thought he was gay. So an hour or so goes by, they have had 2 bottles of really nice wine. Ordered basically everything they could off the menu. Everyone was having a great time. Then my hostess comes around the corner of the bar and motions for me to come talk to her. There is a man on the phone who is extremely upset and needs the bartender to answer the phone, so I go for the phone, having no idea what this man wanted. Hello sir, thank you for holding. What can I help you with? The man starts with a question. Is there a man with dark short hair, brown eyes, a bit on the bigger side, sitting next to a short blonde woman with blue eyes at your bar? I turn around to get another look at them and reply to the man saying yes, they have been here for a while. What's up? The man doesn't say anything for a few seconds, then in a very unhappy tone said that's my wife and my brother. Just as he said it I turned to look at the couple one more time only to see the end of a kiss. I told the man I wasn't sure what I should do, or what he should do. I felt so awful, seeing this man's life literally crumble. I told the man I thought I should hang up and he should call his wife. After that the man at my bar asked for his check, tipped well, and the 2 of them left. I haven't seen them since. I'm sorry for the spelling everyone. I'm a lost cause, haha. Wow, this one made my heart hurt. I had a summer job at Gilligan's, which is a shitty seafood place around the Charleston area. I seat this obese black couple who were actually pretty funny. They reminded me a lot of Chef's parents. Anyways, I bring them their drinks and ask if they're ready to order. I can't remember what the husband ordered, but the wife didn't like it. So he looks at her and says, woman, I'll still eat that ass of yours when you eat chili. so don't give me no shit for ordering what I want. She immediately replied, Harvey, Emma just need you to shut the hell up. Then they both started laughing. Best table ever. And they tipped me like $20. I'll still eat that ass of yours when you eat chili. That is the best thing I have read today. I mean, if that ain't love. There's a line though. Props to them for that line being really fucking far out. In a sea of sad responses, this is a breath of fresh air. A girl trying to impress her date by talking about how pharaohs were aliens. I just picture some thirsty ass dude like, huh, fascinating. I never knew. Nodding that what the fuck is this person saying nod the whole time. I'd stoke the fire. Man. That would be the best date of my life. She was probably a stoner who watched way too much Ancient Aliens with Action Bronson. Or thought Stargate was a documentary. It wasn't. The movie wasn't. The TV show was. Honestly, at this point the History Channel should just syndicate it. It'll be the best thing they've aired in years. And probably the most historically accurate. The US Air Force really exists. So that isn't that far from the truth. Saw a mother take her knife and with the flat part of it whack the hand off her 2-year-old child because she was drawing something with her left hand. She yelled at her, no, use your right hand. Good girls don't write with their left hand. This was as I was standing there taking their order and writing with my left hand. Fuck. Dart. Lefties. Am I right? From context, I would assume that, yes, you are righty. This stuff still happens, especially in Eastern Europe. Kids are forced to write with their right hand if they demonstrate any left-handedness. I witnessed it firsthand many times. I'm in the UK, and way back when I started school in the mid-90s, I was told in school that I had to write with my right hand. I'd just switch the pencil back into my left hand as soon as the teacher walked away, and I ended up getting special writing lessons, which meant that I had to miss some of our playtime while the teacher watched me write very slowly and messily with my right hand. I don't think they do this anymore, though. I went full time on being left-handed as soon as I got out of there. Edit because I can't reply to all of these. Yes, it happened. I didn't think it was a big deal, so this has been a surprising level of response. I wasn't tortured, called the devil a sinner or anything, and my teacher never told me why I shouldn't use my left hand. I protested at first, but my wannabe smartass ended up accepting you just should as a reason, and tried to write right-handed. I smudged ink for years until I started writing sideways, as in I'll turn the paper at a right angle to my hand, so the top of the paper is facing my right side, and write downwards. I still do that now and people look at me weirdly when I write, but I can't just write going across. I have to turn the paper. Are you somewhat ambidextrous now? I am left-handed and I had a teacher try to force me to write with my right hand. Luckily I just made a passing comment about, and my mother, who is also left-handed, marched down to the school and read this teacher the riot act before class started. Even in my little 8-year-old mind I was so proud and awed by this display of power from my normally very polite mother that I remember it to this day. I have no idea why people have something against left-handedness. It makes zero sense to me. Worked at an airport and I was cleaning the tables while I overheard a man and his high-class prostitute he had flown in talk about terms and conditions as well as ordinary things. Apparently it was the first time he'd done it and he was nervous his wife would somehow find out. They discussed do's and don'ts and well, you get the idea. But in all honesty the bloke seemed like a shy guy, didn't look bad, and the hooker was exemplary in the way she treated him, and the money she earned was more than my monthly salary. It's interesting that you capitalize the letter I in words that start with it. Are you trying to confess that it was really you with the prostitute? Maybe it's one of those codes where it spells something. I'll decode. I. Definitely a reference to the great pillars of the Saturn temple. Grab the shovels. To this day I feel like shit having witnessed this. A couple years ago, working nights at a greasy spoon diner, I was used to really drunk people coming in all night. I rarely saw any children, and if I did, something felt wrong about it. One Saturday night, this woman dragged her 4-year-old daughter into the restaurant and ordered her a kid's meal, which the girl would not eat, and she started to fuss. After a minute, the mom started cursing and dragged the girl by her arm into the bathroom, presumably to teach her a lesson. They came back to the table a minute later and the child silently picked at her food. At the same time, a drunk couple came in. They were in good spirits, laughing, kissing, whatever. The angry mother spots them and starts screaming vulgarities at the man, who responds with something like, "Oh hell no, who the fuck do you think you are, bringing her here with your drunk ass at 3 AM?" He goes to get his daughter, who screams daddy and wraps her arms around his neck. He asked me to call them a cab, which I did, but no sooner did the mother start making a scene, trying to grab her child, and then started a very physical fight with the girlfriend when she couldn't get the kid away from him. I called the police, which caused the mother to bolt, and the cops stayed with the father and girlfriend until the cab arrived. I hope he's been a good dad. I served at Olive Garden for a few months during college. One table stands out, an AskReddit wearing a shirt that wouldn't quite cover his beer belly, covered in sweat stains, and all amounts of neckbeard, kept calling me sugar tits, sweet lips, candy ass etc. during the meal. I am a man. He then tipped 0.86 cents. Edit. Alright, he just tipped 86 cents 3/4, a dime, and a penny. You candy asses knew what I meant. 0.86 cents. Honestly, if he hadn't tipped at all, I wouldn't have judged him so much. A very small tip sends a bigger message than no tip. It's a very deliberate middle finger. Family of like 8 or so. Grandpa is paying. He has the check and credit card in hand, and is trying to insert the card into the little plastic sleeve inside the check presenter. As I walk up he says, "It's too tight. I can't get it in." Smiles and elbows his wife. "Sure haven't said that in a while." She turned bright red, said his name in that "you're in trouble" tone and gave him a much harder elbow. Edit. My most popular comment, and one that just got gold, is about ancient vagina. Nice. Harold. I bet his name was Harold. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Classic Harold. Seniors being inappropriate is one of my favorite things ever. Grandpa. No. Stop. Sure haven't said that in a while. So much. Overheard lawyers discussing a Catholic cathedral child molestation case. My favorite was a group of nurses though, pouring waters as one says the sentence. "So I guy came in for an adult circumcision yesterday. Miss the rest of the story. Return with drinks just as she's saying yay. So Grace pulls back the foreskin. Yay. He comes. Never ask a nurse about their day. It was worse than yours. Instead of nurses I read nuns in my head." Edit. Hey, thanks for the gold. Kind stranger. This sure blew up. Did the same thing. Was very confused as to why nuns are playing with dicks. Happened to me too. Must be a mental contextual shortcut pattern because of Catholic. That is super interesting. Edit. So it's called priming. Wikipedia webpage. Props to Sarah's Val. Reddit webpage. Add another data point. Definitely read none. Cause he started out with Catholic priests is my guess. I did the same thing. My mom is a L&D nurse. She never held back from discussing birth and shit at the dinner table with us. I'm totally desensitized now. She did you a favor. The mannequin arm story. Reddit webpage leaps to mind. I heard if you complain here you get your meal for free. I sidled by and politely told her that wasn't the case. Edit. Fucking hell, 10k upvotes. Time to get answering some replies. I wish spineless managers would tell more people to fuck off. Applications for management positions in corporate chains specify that you must be able to lift 25 pounds. You must have had your spine removed. That's why corporate fast food managers are a special breed. I worked at Cracker Barrel and we had a family come in every week, give their baby coffee in a bottle, and order a feast. Then they would leave without paying or tipping. Managers knew this and did nothing. Then I got in trouble for refusing to serve their mug. It is. My mom says it is pretty common for a patient to fill their baby bottle with Mountain Dew. WTF is wrong with PPL? But Mountain Dew has what babies crave. Electrolytes? Oh yeah, you get a ticket to pay the cashier in front. These people have to ruin everything. These aren't so much overhearing, but here's a few things that stand out in memory from when I worked at Denny's when I was 17. On the weekends I worked the graveyard shift, and there was a club around the corner in a strip mall. So craziness was common after 2 AM. On one occasion a group of about 4 or 5 people came in and sat in my section. There was a pretty hot chick at the table, and apparently it was her 21st birthday. When I approached the table her and her boyfriend were kinda off arguing. I think just because she was getting annoyingly drunk. As I walked up to the table she looked at me with a huge smile, yelled it's my 21st birthday and proceeded to yank her shirt up showing me her tits. Her boyfriend yanked the shirt back down, and they went back to arguing. I told them I'd come back in a few minutes for their order. On another occasion a guy came in with gold rope chain necklaces, a button-up shirt with the top few buttons undone letting his massive bush of chest hair pop out, and a cell phone. Back when cell phones required a battery the size of a briefcase damn near. He came in with 2 hot chicks, and was clearly doing everything he could to impress them. I took their drink order, brought them their coffee, and came back to take their food order. When I went back to the kitchen to make their salads the hostess answered the phone, and told me I had a phone call. When I picked up the phone, it was that guy calling me to ask me to bring him more creamer. Another time I was working as the host up front. On the weekends we always had an off-duty police officer working as security, and he hung out behind the counter with the hostess. One night we had a group of people standing near the counter waiting to be seated. As they walked off he said, I think that old guy just stole the toothpick dispenser. I looked over and sure enough there was a trail of toothpicks going all the way from the register counter over to the table they sat down at. So the cop went over to the table and asked the guy if he happened to have a toothpick dispenser. The guy got very defensive and very angry that someone would accuse him of something like that. After he finished his tirade the cop said, look, I know you have it, and pointed out the trail of toothpicks leading to the table and said, if you want, I can wait until you walk out the door and arrest you for petty theft, or you can give it to me now. The guy angrily slammed the dispenser on the table, and his party wound up leaving. Edit to all the comments about the guy taking her to Denny's. This was in the 80s, and back then, at least where I live, there wasn't really anywhere else to eat that was open after 2 AM, so he didn't have a lot of options. Edit to holy shit, who knew a few old life experiences would get me 10 times the upvotes I've ever had on a comment on Reddit. Why would you even want a toothpick dispenser ? We have a toothpick dispenser in our home. Edit, a paid for toothpick dispenser. My mom and I went to a restaurant in a town we were visiting, and we were seated close by a family just sitting down to dinner. As soon as they sat down, the waitress asked if they wanted a drink. Dad and mom ordered wine and son looks at waitress and then blurts out to his parents, I'm gay. Waitress leaves. Parents look at their son and then look at each other. Mom then asks dad what he is thinking of having to eat. Son again exclaims, I'm gay. Parents look at him deadpan and say in unison, we know. Then waitress came and took our orders and I didn't hear what happened next, but they stayed and enjoyed their meal and seemed to be fine with each other. I like to think he's told them that repeatedly every time they go anywhere like that. Kind of like the joke where the guy calls his mom, Mom, now don't freak out, but I'm at the hospital, and she replies, you don't need to call me every time you get to work, because he worked at a hospital. Honestly, first time my roommate who's a nurse texted me saying she was at the hospital and needed me to do something for her, I panicked for about 30 seconds till I realized she's at work. I did that all the time as an EMT. Hey, I was just at an accident, and I'm at the hospital now. Oh my god, are you okay? Yeah, I just need you to drop my phone charger off at the station when you get a minute. Starting to get low. Comedic. This happened to me all the time as a kid. Chatting with friends who knew my dad was a doctor, someone else who didn't know would freak out. My friends were fascinated by how night shifts and being on call works, so I'd get a lot of random questions like, hey, is your dad still at the hospital? And I'd answer, yeah, he's been there like every night this week, or no, he's at home sleeping now, but he was there for like 2 days. I love this. I'm gay. No shit. You getting the sampler or what? Are you serious, son? We just picked you up from dance camp. Double quote. Friends of mine have a son who is gay. When he came out to them, they were like, oh honey, we've known that for years. Sometimes you legitimately can't tell. Sometimes it seems like the person coming out is the last person to have realized they were gay. I had a high school friend whom we spent years telling, it's okay, we all accept you and don't mind that you're gay, while he insisted he was straight. He finally came out junior year and was pissed that no one was surprised. People told me that too, all through high school. Not gay, just repressed. Of course at least a few of them were actually saying I've done everything short of take off all my clothes and jump on you, so I guess either I'm that unattractive or you're gay. Sigh. So oblivious. Shucker at an oyster bar here. So other than all the obvious terrible jokes I get, I can say without a doubt the most fucked up thing I've ever heard was a man sitting with a woman who was getting more and more distraught, and the man looks at her and says, "Look, I told you when this whole thing started if I had to choose between you or my wife, I'm picking my wife." Okay, so for all the people on here asking about jokes, I get called a mother shucker at least 4 times a day. But the best, albeit classiest jokes I've heard are, what's the difference between a shucker with epilepsy and a hooker with diarrhea? One shucks between fits and the fucks between shits. My favorite though is, why could you never have a oyster bar in a strip club? Cause you would never be able to tell which one was bad. What's the difference between an epileptic oyster shucker and a hooker with dysentery? One of them shucks between fits. You know, Montague. Billy Bob Thornton really loves this dentist. Oh boy. I've posted this before, but it's the same structure. What's the difference between a clever midget and a venereal disease? One's a cunning runt. What's the difference between a pickpocket and a peeping Tom? One snatches watches. What's the difference between a circus and a strip club? One is full of cunning stunts. Good for him, I guess. Lol. Itch. More like shellfish. I'll see myself out. My girlfriend and I have both waited on a dominatrix with a specific customer. She forces him to wear women's underwear to a restaurant, and pays extra for the server to be discreet. She makes him keep some of his buttons unbuttoned so people can see he's wearing a pink bra. Other than that, it's a pretty normal table, except for the weird commands she gives him occasionally. It seems like it's going to be a lot weirder than ends up being. Listen briefly off to 12 to 14-year-old girls talk about their first time having sex, while their parents were sitting across from them. Now that's fucked up. OP could very well just be shit at guessing ages. It was actually 2 short people, both male, with grey beards. Hi, Hrothgar must be a lonely place. That's insane, but I believe it. My doctor tried to get me to go on birth control at 13 because she knew what we were all up to. I never even kissed a boy until 18. But I guess some of us were. In fairness, I knew a lot of girls in school who had lost it by 13. Jesus, I guess I was just incredibly sheltered and clueless. We had 6 girls in my graduating class of 85 students get pregnant during high school. Every one of them got pregnant during the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade. It seems like, if you can make it past 13 without getting pregnant, you are probably wise enough to buy condoms. One of those girls had 2 more kids before finishing high school. She did finish though, and lives a completely normal life now, with a normal job and family. She just got started a little early. Around 8th grade was a really weird time. Girls either thought kissing was a huge deal, or they were already rounding 3rd and heading for home. Probably not worth the 30 seconds. So, do you guys have any masturbation tips? Hey, you have your hobbies, I have mine. It's one of the most popular hobby in the world when you think about it. Put something in your butt while you're doing it. Directions unclear. Penis stuck in ass. Congratulations, you have reached the highest level on accident. If you sit on your dick until it goes numb, it feels like you're jerking off somebody else. You chug that mojito like you're gonna chug me when we get back home. Father-son night at Ruba Tuesday, and I've lost my appetite for food. But now I want some Ruba Tuesday. Who said romance is dead? Reminds me of something I heard when I was working at a cookie shop. An interracial couple, black male, white female, ordered ice cream. The girl asked if we had hot fudge, and I replied that we didn't. The guy said, "It's okay baby, you got plenty of hot fudge at home." I fucking lost it. Then it turns out the woman just really loves hot fudge and has a stockpile of it at their house, and the man looks at you like you're a total dunce. Bartender waiter here. I don't remember half the stuff I overheard. One thing I remember with vivid clarity, however, was a drunkard who snorted vomit off our bar top. That's the most fucked up thing I've ever seen. So maybe it qualifies. Gross. I went to high school with a guy who would make himself vomit on the concrete and then he'd scoop it up and eat it. He wondered why no girls would date him. There sure are some wonderful people in this world. Not a server anymore, but this one made me rich. Oh god, we took so many shots at that wedding. Weren't you pregnant at the time? Yes. Oh, but you didn't know you were pregnant? No. I knew. Oh. Well, the baby turned out fine. Haha. What has Billy Bob Thornton done that a 5-year-old would be a fan of? Angelina Jolie. That's why I'm a fan. Well, that and Bad Santa. French fried taters. Asking the real question here. Fargo Season 1. I am a part-time waiter for a restaurant in a football stadium, and my boss is a literal piece of human garbage. He's a sexist, chauvinistic asshole who, if you're male or an unattractive female, will give you the worst jobs whilst giving VIP treatment to the barely legal blondes working tables. He made a friend of mine help reset the buffet station, which included carrying a large tray of something. I didn't really see what. She was obviously struggling, and as she wobbled across the room, I hear a yell and a crash. She's dropped the tray, and worse, her arm had dislocated from her shoulder. Obviously the first thing she does is shout holy fuck like any normal person would had they just dislocated their arm. Cue asshole boss storming over. He starts having a massive rant about how incompetent she is and how she's got to clean up the mess, all while her arm is still clearly swinging free. What he didn't account for is that her family was actually eating at the restaurant that day. Watching a whole group of people go up to him and chew him out in front of the whole restaurant was one of the highlights of my time there. I hope she sued the bastard. Heard a group of 3 women talking about how each of their 4/5 whatever many marriages are going and how they treat marrying for money as their career. One of them paid with their newest husband's black Amex card. That is so fucked up. Visa and MasterCard have much lower merchant fees. Yeah, but Amex has much better customer service and loyalty systems. I sense a connection. I could go hail corporate on him, but he's not wrong. My gold Amex has a pretty ridiculous reward system, and that's just every scrub can get 1 level. I hear with the blacker personal concierge fallacy with every purchase. But seriously, I got a TV with my points. A really nice one. My other ones are usually just shitty budget tickets or a night at a chain hotel. My comment from the last time this was asked, I waited tables at the Olive Garden 10 years ago. Not really fucked up as much as it was funny. A guy and his wife sat down at a table and immediately started arguing. Something about his affair and how a baby from it was costing them money. Finally it culminated as I was bringing out their salad. As I walked away I heard the wife say, well, maybe if you hadn't boned our son's girlfriend and gotten her pregnant, we could afford to eat somewhere nicer than the fucking Olive Garden. Oh look, the highlight of my meals, unlimited fucking bagged salad. Maybe you could save up and we could go to Joe's Crab Shack for our anniversary. Asshole. Edit. Great. This is now my first and second highest rated comment. Geez, I want to be married to this woman. Not because I want to bang my son's girlfriends, but because if that's the level of shit she's giving him, or not giving him, for that, then the things that are issues for me wouldn't get even the slightest reaction from her. It's not what I heard, but one night I had a table with a group of 4 older ladies and they ordered a meat lover's pizza, and for some reason they had brought milk bones. Yes, the dog biscuit. They crushed them up and sprinkled them on the pizza. They even left a whole one for me along with a pretty generous tip. Still debating whether or not they were dogs in disguise. I've waited tables at a mid to upscale level family owned restaurants part-time for 9 years. It's located in a suburban area of Midwest cities, so we have mix of rural and urban folks. Usually this is noticeable based on what they drink or how they tip. One night, I waited on a couple that looked more like the young hip urban crowd. They looked at the wine list for a good 5 minutes, and when I came back, she asks me what do the numbers by the price per glass mean. I thought this was a joke, so I replied the price per bottle of course. She stared at me for a moment, calmly closes the menu, and slaps her partner in the face with the menu, screaming we're so unsophisticated. You need to take Emmy out more. I audibly laughed, I just couldn't help it. He however didn't find it funny and told me she would stick with water. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Removed. That's when the nanny gets in the car and disappears. Mother probably wouldn't even care. Not a waiter, but I had the following story told to me by an EMT teaching a first aid class. She said she was sitting at a table in a restaurant watching a group of teenage girls sitting at a table next to her. They were all bubbly and giggly like young girls are apt to do, with the exception of one girl who was really quiet. She watched as the girl slipped deeper and deeper into a trance-like state which she recognized as a diabetic coma. She went over to the table and told the girls that the girl needs some sugar quickly. They replied they'd already given her some and she'd be alright in a few minutes. That's when the EMT noticed several empty packets of Sweet and Low on the table. She asked them, is this what you gave her? They said of course, we don't want her to get fat. The girl eventually got some lemonade and was fine after a few minutes. It's possible the EMT saved that girl's life if she suggested they give her real sugar. Scary close call. Been serving and bartending for a decade. I've seen lots of breakups. Cheaters. Had a group of swingers that would come in weekly and outline timeline their sex plans. Strangest was the guy who brought this weird anime doll pillow in on Valentine's Day. Ordered her food, cut it up, talked to her, had brought her flowers and a stuffed animal. Really strange. I waited tables for 10 years at this small family-owned restaurant in rural Ohio that had a famous sandwich. It was on a few Food Network shows and stuff like that. A family comes in, mom, dad, 2 little kids. I take their drink orders, and as I am getting the drinks, the dad pulls me aside. Dad, my son is obsessed with Billy Bob Thornton. We told him that Billy Bob comes here and eats from time to time. So could you just play along? Me. Yeah, of course, no problem. I return with the drinks, and the son, who is about 5 years old, starts asking me questions about Billy Bob Thornton, like what he orders, if he is nice, stuff like that. I make shit up, because I want a good tip and don't want to ruin this little kid's life. He is so excited to hear that Billy Bob comes to the same place he is at. I can only imagine other scenarios where Billy Bob Thornton has appeared in this kid's life. Hey kid, Billy Bob Thornton's dad always tips 50%. The best part is that you know someone probably overheard that conversation and then for the rest of their life thought that Billy Bob Thornton was a regular at this place and they always just missed him. So I actually waited on Billy Bob once. I worked in a restaurant in Little Rock, and this was back when he was with Angelina. It was a smaller restaurant and he came in with a cowboy hat on, jeans, a Harley shirt, and a denim vest with patches. When I first saw him, I wondered if he was a biker who didn't realize the type of restaurant we were, but immediately the owner saw him and recognized him. They invited him in and he sat down and ordered his usual, which was a vegan dish they prepared. Couldn't have been nicer and just relaxed. All the kitchen guys kept coming out to see if Angelina was with him. Apparently he actually did come in fairly often when he was in town. Can't you see I'm on my fucking break? Restaurant manager. One day I was greeting guests walking in the front door. An elderly man came hobbling in. Had to be at least 90 years old. Just picture Mr. Magoo and you will have my vision. I say, "So welcome. How are you doing today?" He turns to me and with the straightest face says, "Well, I got the pussy." I glance at my hostess who has gone bright red, and turn back to him. "I am sorry, what I've got the pussy, you know, when you feel great but look like shit." Winks at me and scuttles down to his table. I can honestly say I have never laughed as much at a guest's joke in my life. Edit. Yes, that is exactly how the old fella said it, like he caught the common cold. An old farmer type guy. Old man jokes are the best. Wake me up in 40 years, Martha. I wanna be an old man. Why did you say that name? I turned 30 this year, and sometimes wish I could just skip to being 70-80 plus, where you just do and say whatever the fuck you want and people just brush it off because you're old. I'm 36. You have to practice not giving a fuck in your 30s and 40s, I think. Try it out this week, like a test run with obnoxious socks and shorts at the grocery store. You'll love it. I was running an exhibitor booth at a conference when I had something similar happen. This guy walked up and told me he was 78 and had just gotten married. I congratulated him, and he followed up with, "There's only one reason I decided to get married, the sex. Now I can get it all the time." He just chuckled lecherously to himself and waddled off. Didn't even try to talk business with me. Edit. Both equals booth. So, why are you telling me this? Are you kidding? I'm telling everybody. I wonder if he waited 90 years to tell that joke, or if he told it all the time just testing if he was old enough for people not to care. I was once helping a friend by washing dishes in her cafe, and I needed a few dollars. I would often bus tables also. It was buffet. A woman asked the guy she was with, "So, date, brother, IDK, are you full?" He said yay, but wait while I make another plate. She said why? He said because it's a buffet. When I bussed their table he had left a plate full of meat, no veggies, no bread, no dessert, just a plate full of every meat on the buffet. That's the day I started hating most people. They should start charging people for unfinished plates, like they do in some all-you-can-eat sushi places. My local buffet place does that. You pay a fee to get in, then a waiter checks that your plate is empty before you bounce. They'll let one or two things slide, but if you've still got half a plate left, they charge you for it. Nothing too much, just 10 cents an ounce. But it stops people from taking too much. Slide sushi into purse. Purse snatcher is very surprised yet grateful. All you can eat more than you can eat. Wow, that's a gent. Not a fucking word. The CEO of a rather well-known company was discussing, proudly, that they had fired a man who was a year or two off retirement so they could employ his recently graduated daughter. Tipped like shit too. Hate this sort of thing. Saw it a lot in the newsbies. Lots of sales folks. One day the VP of marketing proudly was laughing hysterically as he told us the story of how he fired the one black guy because he refused to act all thuggish to sell ad space to a hip hop clothes store around the way. He's in hysterics like it's the funniest thing that ever happened. But the words of his story are horrifying. Oh my god, it was hilarious. He started crying. He goes, "But I need this job. My wife is pregnant, can you believe it?" Endless laughter. Oh my god, it was hilarious. Could you sue for racial dissemination or unfair firing in this case? Sure you could, and I bet you could even win too, if you weren't living paycheck to paycheck because you are criminally underfunded. Bartending. But here ya go. I had my back to two guys who just arrived and were about 3 beers in. They start talking about a girl and what they'd do to her. Nothing I haven't heard 1,000 times until this. Bet if we roofie her she'd do all of it, followed by laughter. I just chalk it up to shitty humor until one suggests just dropping it in her next drink. I stepped out of the bar, had my manager call the cops, and kicked them out when the cops got there. Searched and sure as fuck they had oxy and roofies on them. The hero we need. And so many poor souls deserved. Holy fuck, that's terrifying. That poor girl had no clue she was literally being preyed upon. You're an amazing person and PR probably saved that girl. Thank you for doing this. You definitely saved someone. That's fucking amazing of you. Glad you happened to hear that and do something about it. You'd be surprised the amount of people who wouldn't say a word if they overheard that you probably saved a women, from a horrible, life-altering experience. Good on you, mate. Wish more people would give a fuck. TLDR. Toddlers and tiaras type mom uses John Bennett Ramsey as a cautionary tale to inspire good behavior in her full pageant-clad 7-year-old daughter. It's 1997 or 1998. Horrible chain Italian restaurant in a city whose most prominent native son is a fictional meth cook. A family sat down in my section. One of the kids was wearing a pageant costume and an absurd amount of makeup. She looked to be about 7 years old, on its own with no overheard conversation. This was legit creepy, but buckle your seatbelts, friends. It's about to get a whole lot creepier. So I deliver carb bombs to this table, and notice that the little girl's kid cup of chocolate milk is nearly empty. I asked her parents if they would like me to bring her a refill, some 2% or whole, or some water. Careful not to utter the words chocolate milk just because most parents don't want their kids having more than 1 cup of chocolate milk. They asked for water, so I brought a fresh cup of water. As I approached the table, I heard unhappy child noises. Then an adult says John Bennett always took at least 1 bite of her dinner. For context, the John Bennett Ramsey case was a big deal in New Mexico. It was just up the road, and it hadn't been a year or so before. It was scary for parents, not something they joked about. Surely I'd misheard, or was projecting. Because honestly, I had thought, who the hell still does that John Bennett bullshit anymore? When I first saw them walk into the restaurant, I gave the little beauty queen her water and she lost her mind. I want chocolate milk. She takes a swat at the water cup, knocks it over. I pick it back up and get to cleaning up the mess. Mom says clear as day, "Brianna, what happened to John Bennett when she knocked over her drink?" Now I've let a lot of things slide while waiting tables. If I'm not actively tuning out conversations, I'm certainly acting as if I am. But this, friends, this would not stand. After a long silence, I ask the mom, I'm dying to know. What did happen when John Bennett knocked over her drink? Silence. Oh, number, you're not implying. Silence. I often wonder what happened to that kid. Not exactly overheard but more related to my interaction with the table. Two adult males that I assume were meeting professionally and not well acquainted with each other. The one guy opens the conversation when I greet them by telling the other one I learned at finishing school to never make eye contact with the help or something like that. Sure enough, the entire hour or so they are both there. The one who said that never makes eye contact with me once or even looks up in my general direction. Later on when I asked them if I could get them anything else, the same guy says to the companion I also learned at finishing school that if you want a refill you just do this, and proceeds to tap the rim of his glass with his finger without looking at me or saying anything. I was serving these two guys. Everything was going fine. One of them got a dessert and I brought 2 spoons. One guy stops me and asks is it weird for them to share a dessert. I told them no. People share them all the time. He says I know but we are 2 guys. The other guy then reminds him of their threesome they had the night before. He says, dude after I busted in her you went down on her and ate her pussy. The guy casually replies, no I didn't. I was eating her ass. That's when I just lost it and was laughing to tears. I told him hey bro, you should have no problem sharing that dessert. You guys enjoy. Disclaimer. I'm actually copy and pasting, with slight edits, from an old RTLS from Eorsova thread I posted in. What's the most fucked up thing you've overheard at a table? Tales from your server webpage. Strap yourselves in for story time. I worked at insert thoroughly unpleasant diner chain in a low-income town for a long time and overheard some real nasty stuff. This one time, for example, a customer started seizing really badly. We had to call an ambulance for them and, as the paramedics did their thing, one of my tables decided to start mocking the individual that was quite literally dying on the floor. But that isn't a very fun story. One time I had a young couple in my section. I was wolfing down some coffee, shits like heroin to first shift servers, so I missed them be seated, but when I noticed them I went over to say hi and get drink orders. Immediately it was obvious something was wrong. The guy had this feel to him. You know when you meet somebody and you can just tell they're the kind of person to kick someone when they're down. The kind of person who'd bite the hand that feeds them. The slimy kind of troglodyte who'd play the accordion or some other disturbing crap. He was giving off that kind of vibe. Slimy, unpleasant. She seemed sweet. They ordered their drinks and as I was pouring them a coworker came up and said dude, you gotta watch that table. That guy's weird. I asked why, and he said I was walking past when he grabbed my arm and just said never cheat, man. Never cheat huh? I take the drinks out and the guy grabs me by the arm and tells me, similarly, never cheat, man. You don't ever want to cheat. His girlfriend looks embarrassed. I laugh nervously and say something along the lines of I love my wife enough to not have to when they order food. Every single time I approach the table he's giving me the same thing. Don't cheat man. Don't cheat. Don't be dumb, man. Never cheat on your girl. You don't wanna play man. Don't cheat. Her face was looking worse and worse and it became apparent, very quickly, that he had taken his girlfriend out to tell her he was cheating on her and was breaking up with her. Eventually he pays. Here man. Just promise me you're never gonna cheat. Don't throw shit like that away man. Don't cheat. And says something to her. She blurts something out at the same time as a sob and gets up to leave, and that's when I see it. She's fucking pregnant. TLDR. A guy revealed his infidelity and broke up with his pregnant girlfriend in a restaurant roughly as cheap as McDonald's. Edit. Welp. That's easily the most comments I've had on a story, and they fall into 3 categories. A. What's the restaurant? B. Sounds like she was cheating. C. The fuck's wrong with the accordion you twat? A. IHOP. I posted the original story back when I was convinced even mentioning the name would beetlejuice me into a lawsuit. I don't know why. Bit paranoid. B. Definitely the guy. I can't emphasize enough how peculiar he was acting. At one point he said don't be like me, man. I'm not a good man or words to that effect. I should have mentioned that in the original story. C. Accordions are Satan's whoopee cushion and you fucking know it. I feel like these are Waffle House stories. They feel really Waffle House-esque. Here comes the not a waiter but story. But my friend told me this one and it stuck with me because it was sad and awkward for her. She worked at Applebee's for a while and had this one couple she was waiting on who both looked pretty down and were real awkward most of the time. She was walking towards them to ask how they were doing at one point after their meal was over when she overheard them agreeing that they really did need to finalize their divorce and there was no hope for reconciling. She quickly turned away, not wanting to interrupt such a moment. When she came back a bit later, the wife was no longer there and the husband had his head on the table and was crying. He had finished his food and she had the check in her hand, but felt so awkward trying to comfort him while also handing him the check. Don't most meals at Applebee's end with crying? This isn't quite an overheard story, but it's a good one. I waited tables at a college town Ruber Tuesday, one not. We had a bunch of frat guys come in, all sitting at the same table. They ordered food and several beers. Everything started out fine, but after about 20 minutes, they were getting loud and dropping some F-bombs and other things unnecessary in a family restaurant. I could tell several of the other tables were slightly annoyed and a little uncomfortable, so I finally went over the frat guys and reminded them that this was a family restaurant and they were really going to have to tone it down. One of the frat boys stood up, looked me straight in the face and sneered, "And if we don't tone it down, what the fuck are you gonna do about it?" I was not prepared with an answer, but then I heard a voice behind me. "I don't know what he's gonna do about it, but if you keep this up, I'm gonna come over there and kick all of your asses." I turn around and there's this giant of man out to enjoy a quiet dinner with his wife. His wife now looks amused at the prospect of her husband wiping the floor with a couple of drunk frat guys. Anyway, frat guys quickly collect their checks, pay and get out. I can't desert for the couple and it was a great night after all. I've always wanted to be that guy, but knowing my luck I'd wind up getting curb stomped by a bunch of frat boys. Agreed. I want to say this guy was an off-duty cop. I feel I had seen him in uniform before. While bartending, I had two fathers who must have been meeting up for the first time after their sons started dating. After initially getting to know each other, they started to make guesses as to why their sons were gay. Dad 1 goes with the born that way option and doesn't seem bothered about the how or why. Dad 2 had a much different theory, explaining that Grandpa molested the shit out of the boy and several other family members. Then he talks about how he himself narrowly avoided Grandpa's slippy fists and wanted fondle party. After his upsetting tale concluded, he drained the rest of his beer, sighed and said, "It's a tad sad, but he's a bad dad, man." Don't know why that sentence stuck with me other than the weird naturally rhyming way he said it. In college I worked at the so-so place as a bartender and waiter. When I was 21-22, one dinner time when I'm waiting tables a couple walks in and is seated in my section. Maybe mid to late 30s, married. When I approached I could tell they were arguing. She was quiet, distant. He was red in the face. I kept my spiel about the specials to a minimum, got their drinks order and then came back in a bit for dinner order. I could tell they were arguing again but they shut up as I approach. He orders for them both, tersely. Then I start walking away when he says, "Hey, question for you." I turn back and say, "Yes sir, would you fuck my wife?" I'm shocked, look confused, look at her. She's staring daggers at him. I fumble for a moment, not sure I heard right or, if I did, what to say. Then he says, "I don't mean will you, I mean would you? I mean, is she attractive? Do you find her attractive?" I'm red in the face and sweating but I dutifully glance at her, then mumble, "Yes sir, she's very attractive." He goes, "There, you see," and holds his hands up like "told you so." She glances at me and then hisses at him. He's in his 20s. He'd fuck a hole in the wall. "You can leave now," she says, flapping a hand at me. I scurry away. My shirt was sticking to me. I didn't say another word to them except to ask if they wanted refills on their drinks. They left a normal tip. To this day I still think about it. Not overheard as it was aimed at me but kinda relevant. It was a girls' night at the wine bar I worked at. The restaurant booked male strippers and lots of prosecco which led to lots of drunk women of all ages. I went to serve prosecco at one of the tables full of 60-year-old women. One said to me, "I bet you've got a body like that under them clothes," pointing at one of the strippers. I said, "No, just a regular guy me." She then proceeded to grab my bum and say, "Just what I want tonight, a lover's bum." I've never chatted up a waitress since. Was waiting on an older southern gentleman who looked like Colonel Sanders. His wife ordered a dish that's a bit on the heavier side and his response was, "Damn, honey, you're eating like one of your field hands." I did a double take. That reminds me of a story my dad liked to tell. There were 3 couples sitting around a breakfast table, 2 sets of aunt, uncles and my parents. My dad turns to my mom and says, "Pass the sugar," and sure enough she passes the sugar. My uncle says, "Pass the honey," and sure enough the honey is passed. My other uncle, not to be left out, turns to his sweetheart and says, "Pass the bacon, pig." I used to wait tables at a restaurant's golf course, and this group of businessmen would always come and drink beer after their round. They ranged in age from 30-50. There would always be an elaborate song and dance about who would pay for the beers, but it tended to be the one guy who looked like the alpha in this group, who had a better watch and better clubs than the others. This goes on for months, and then one day, one of the members who has never paid for a round ends up being on the hook. He has insisted, "No, I should pay," but the others finally let him. He gulps, looks worried, and tries every card he has, but they are all refused. He runs off to call his bank, and I hear the alpha mutter, "I should have made her get the abortion." Edit. To clarify, I long thought that the alpha guy was the other guy's father, but Majacob suggests what to me is more plausible given the interactions of the 2 men, that the alpha guy was his father-in law and that he had tried to get his daughter to abort the child of this loser. I overheard an elderly couple doing Lil Jon impressions. I was a waitress at IHOP, and one day I sat this elderly man that was waiting for his date to come in, so I sat him in a 2-person booth. It must have been a blind date or online date, because once I sat the woman down and I started walking away, I heard him say, "I'm sorry, you're not what I was expecting," and he got up and left. The lady sat there really upset until she left. I was 15 at the time and didn't know what to say. I was just in shock that this old man with a cane didn't like an equally old lady. A nice looking family with 2 parents and a child walked into the vegetarian restaurant that I volunteered for. These restaurants in my country are often set up by pagodas, ran by monks for the purpose of charity. Most of the time is for profit from devout Buddhists who come to cleanse the souls by paying big money and eating vegetarian food. The parents were devout Buddhist, so they chose to be vegetarian, but the kid was forced to. I could see the pain in his face as he was forced to eat some tofu. He refused to eat, as you may guessed. The father then slapped the kid with a slap so hard 50 people in the room could hear the kid's teeth flying out of his mouth. The kid hit the floor hard before his mother held him by the ear and forced him to apologize to the Buddha for disrespecting him. The father told him, "You little shit, better respect the Buddha or you will eat from the floor again tonight." Yes sir. Turns out that some Buddhists think that beating your child and feeding them food scrapes on the ground is okay, but not becoming a vegetarian is a sin. What the fuck? Some people shouldn't have kids, making him eat from the floor like he is an animal. Welcome to Nam, where we strip our kids of clothes and force them to walk naked down the streets because they failed to get an 10/10 in math class, but go on to Facebook to post about some Japanese moms who teach their kids the right way and brag about how people should follow those examples. People ruin everything. Even the most chill and peaceful religions become toxic when it becomes more about empty shows of piety than about the actual teachings. Even the most chill and peaceful religions become toxic. It happens to all of them. Buddhists in Myanmar are currently practicing ethnic cleansing just short of genocide against the Rohingya Muslim minority. I guess bad parenting is worldwide. Bad parenting is accidentally putting your kid upside down in the car seat. This is abuse. This tween boy was for some reason talking about whale vaginas in frightening detail. His older brother told him to stop being a little immature shit. The younger brother responded with, "I thought you liked whale vaginas. Isn't that why you're still dating Evelyn?" I fucking lost it and quickly shuffled back to the kitchen before exploding with laughter. Brutal. Savage. Erect. Found the older brother. Damn, that burn took days to set up after thorough reading on whale vaginas, and executing the proper technique to deliver such a catastrophic burn was absolutely fantastic. Bravo. There's something special about a well-researched burn. There's a very special kind of hatred between teen siblings that says, "I'm willing to fill my search history with whale genitalia just to cut you down." Stay classy, San Diego. These are the types of moments where one day I hope to say something that funny, where whatever service worker nearby needs to do this, or that they just straight up can't contain themselves and laugh in my friend's face, so the roast is that much better. Should have brought an extra side salad with their food drinks. When they question it, say, "Oh, I thought I heard you order a tossed salad. I apologize. I was cribbing a driveway for a woman." 15 or so years ago, on a very hot and humid day, she comes outside and says that looks like really hard work. My coworker and I both acknowledge that it is very hard. She then asks, now I bet you wish you'd gone to college. I couldn't believe her nerve. I was livid, but kept my cool, and explained that I'd studied engineering and architecture briefly, but realized very quickly that I much preferred building things to drawing them. Rude bitch. She was a big fat lazy woman, living in a tiny little bungalow. Not sure where she got the balls to call us out like that. 21 years in this business and I pick and choose my customers and contracts. I only work 8 or 9 months a year, and I never had to pay off any student loans. Never regretted anything. And I bet that cunt is still in that little dive bungalow. I was installing cabinets in a kitchen remodel in a suburban house. The wife had her grandchildren, both teens, visiting. The boy was intently watching my install and had a ton of questions. I took a moment and showed him the process and explained the Cliff's Notes version of how I get lumber, dimension it, build a cabinet, finish it, and the install. Just as the grandfather came in, the grandmother says to the boy, "You don't want to do something like that. You need to go to college and make a good living." Just before I had a chance to tell her about my education, the grandfather says, "Elizabeth, I just gave that man a $9,000 check. Maybe Logan should hear him out." Logan spent half a day touring my shop and I gave him a few books. He and his grandfather are planning to build a canoe now. This teenage girl was ordering drinks with her dad. She chose a hot chocolate and while I can't remember his exact words, he made a really mean, derogatory remark about her weight. I was so shocked. This girl was on the skinny end of slim, not an ounce of fat on her. I went back to the waitress station to tell everyone. We all bitched about how he was a crap parent, but I wish I'd said something at the table to stand up for the girl. I just genuinely didn't have any words. I was so taken aback. I bust tables so I hear tons of conversations. The most screwed up was probably a conversation between two teenage girls. Girl 1. What happened between you and Kyle? Like, why'd you guys break up? Girl 2. He started drifting away from. Wouldn't talk to me. Jason and I talked more in the past 2 days than me and Kyle for like 2 weeks. Like, I get that your mom died like a month ago but like you can't just ignore me, you know? He really needed to get over it if he wanted to save our relationship. Girl 1. When did his mom die? Like, the day? Girl 2. I don't know. Let check. Pulls out her phone and scrolls through what I assume were her messages. I am also cleaning a lot slower to hear the rest of the conversation. Girl 2. The 27th of January. I guess a little less than a month. Whatever. Talking is like the most essential part of a relationship, and if you're not gonna do it, then shrugs. I leave at that point and do the math. That day was the 18th of February, so a little over 3 weeks since that guy's mom died. Pretty heartless. Kyle dodged a fucking bullet. Not a waiter, but I know one heard the exchange. I was at a restaurant with my family, and across the diner a guy was seated with his wife, along with his friends. We're eating, when we loudly hear, "Oh, she loves playing in the ass," immediately followed by "thanks" from his wife. The whole place fell silent, staring right at their table. I was surprised the wife didn't walk out on him. I felt completely humiliated for her. Occasionally customers ask me, male waiter, about the hot waitresses I worked with, or tried to get me to give them messages. Some of these guys appeared married. Yet I worked at a tanning salon and there was a note on this guy's account that he left his number for one of my co-workers. He always comes in with a wedding ring on, so I felt very weird about the whole situation. I walked by this table of 4 women, all between 70 to 80 years old, and overhear one say, "Someone's got to kill her. If she survives she'll kill us all." 3 days later I finally realized they were talking about Hillary Clinton. I was far more entertained and slightly worried before I realized it was political vitriol and not 4 grandmothers discussing a hit on another old lady. Well, I guess they were, but I was imagining someone from their church group. Not so much what I heard but something I saw. This guy was apparently eating with the mother of his child at one section of the restaurant. Unbeknownst to him, his girlfriend at the time was a few tables away eating with a friend. The girlfriend proceeds to jump over a table and a walled off section of the restaurant to attack the baby mama. A scuffle ensues. Hair pieces go flying and at one point the mother dropped her baby carriage. with baby inside. From waist high, I grab the carrier and retreat into the spectators as they break up the fight. The girlfriend spits at the mother and misses hitting the couple sitting at their table behind them. The mother wheels around and demands her baby. I reluctantly give her the child, knowing there's not much I can do other than kidnap the baby and raise it as my own to save it from its monstrosity of a mother. The two escape the restaurant knowing the cops have been called, and the mother uses a brick to break a window of who she thought was the girlfriend's car but turned out to be someone else's. The end. I witnessed a husband tell his wife he was cheating on her, and that they were getting a divorce right after they had ordered a Quizo at a Chili's. Shortly after delivering the Quizo, the man left, and the wife just sat there sobbing. Shit was awkward as fuck, but I suppose if you're going to ruin a restaurant for someone for the rest of their life, it might as well be Chili's. I heard a woman say to this drunk beside her at a bar I was tending, "I hope she dies of venereal disease." No other decipherable context. From the customer side, I was walking to the restroom and came up behind the chef and waiter watching an unbelievably rude customer leaving an expensive steakhouse. Well, he ate it. Never be rude to the people who bring you food. This was my reply on another thread. My experience was a while back when I was waiting tables at a now defunct Irish themed chain restaurant. I was given a tip top on an average Wednesday night. Just a guy and his kid. I walk up and give my standard greeting. "Hi, I'm Jashman 1987. I'll be your waiter this evening. Is there anything?" The guy cuts me off and says, "I'm gonna stop you right there. First answer me a question. Which of your meats is softest?" I was a little taken aback by the strangeness of the question, but I feel that I recovered in record time. I responded with, "Well, we have a Guinness burger which is pretty soft, and we just got an Irish pot roast on the menu this week that is also of the softer side." After pondering this for a few seconds, the man looks at me and says, "The pot roast sounds great. We'll take 2 of those and a couple glasses of water." I walked away from the table, got him his water and put the order in. I was just pondering the oddness of his question and realized I had to urinate. So I head off to the bathroom and I'm at the urinal doing my thing, and who comes in but the soft meat guy. Of course he chooses the urinal right next to me even though there are a plethora of others. He turns to me while I am pissing and says, "So, what's in the pot roast?" I was absolutely stunned. Was this guy serious? Both of our dicks are out and he is asking me about pot roast ingredients? I did what any other sensible person would do and I started listing the ingredients. I said, "Well, let's see, there are peas, carrots, potatoes and beef that are all slow cooked in Guinness beer and it's served with a side of sourdough bread." "Wonderful," he says. "I can't wait to try it." He finishes up, washes his hands and is gone. I was so shocked by this series of events that I hadn't even realized I had finished peeing. After I washed my hands and left the bathroom, I told the waitstaff about my bathroom encounter. From that day forward, whenever somebody had to use the bathroom, it was called making pot roast. One time when delivering drinks to a guy and his wife who was sitting across the table from each other, I accidentally caught a glimpse of the man's phone. The content was very inappropriate. He knew he was caught. I kept my composure completely and didn't skip a beat. At the end of the meal there was a $100 bill in the book in addition to the 20% credit tip. This happened last night. A group of gay guys were talking about their sexual encounters with women. I walk up to refill their waters as one says, "Right when I started to stretch her vag to find the clit, that's when I really started to question what I was doing there. And that's when I asked myself the same thing." Edit. Spelling. Stretch her vag to find the clit. Well, there's a problem right there. Female MMA is so fucking hot. Those girls beat the shit out of each other. Thought it was pretty funny. It was a group of 60 yo men. Wasn't a server technically, but I tended the buffet at a Shoney's for my first job 21 years ago. Anyone who's been to a Shoney's knows that a significant majority of customers want the buffet, which is breakfast in the mornings and late weekend nights. Anyway, in my hometown we had something called the Brownsville Revival Wikipedia webpage, wherein thousands of Pentecostals from literally all over the world flooded into a church called Brownsville Assembly of God across town. These revival services would run all day until at least midnight or 1 AM on weekends, and they were hungry after all that wackiness. Guess which buffet they'd hit? By multiple busloads at once. Yep, mine, and this was the overflow, because there was another Shoney's just up the road from the church that had really get hammered. We closed at 3 AM. and we'd be completely slammed between these yahoos and the bar crowd. They'd start yelling shit, speaking in tongues, and occasionally get the spirit and fall out flailing all over the floor. They'd hit that buffet like a plague of locusts, all the while pulling their weird shit and being extremely rude to the servers. You'd think being in church all day would take the edge off, but nope. Then they'd leave a huge mess, and either stiff their servers or leave a chick tracked as a tip. TLDR, busloads of overwrought Pentecostals would flood my restaurant, lay waste to it, flip shit from their weird religion, and be assholes overall. Cashier at a chain buffet. Older gentleman comes up early in the morning when it's just him in line and me behind the counter. Out of the blue tells me I'm a scholar and gentleman. Then proceeds to ask me if I know what a gentleman is. I don't really know what to say, so chucks and say I don't know. I guess a man who is gentle. He laughs and asks me if I'm squeamish at all and if I want to know the true definition of a gentleman. I laugh and say sure, and he then says, verbatim, a gentleman is a man who can kiss a 16-year-old's pussy and not get an erection. Mind you, I do not know this man and did nothing to prompt this in any way. I was taken aback and really had no clue how to react other than kind of awkwardly chuckle and tell him to have a nice day. I will never forget this encounter for as long as I live. 15 years in restaurant work here. There's a reason I'm no longer doing it. 1. I once had a middle-aged guy tell me that it was obvious my mother didn't love me when I was born after he looked at my name tag. His elderly mother looked at me and laughed. My name isn't common, but it's not unheard of and it's not offensive. When I dropped off their food, I just set it down and said, "Don't choke on it." 2. I waited on a total Guido who acted like he was mafia. He had some ditzy arm candy with him and he made me tell her that he was the most important guy there. I played along because, why not? She ate it up and thought he was Tony Montana 3. While managing a sports bar, I had a guy puff up and get in my face because he wasn't going to pay the outlandish bill that was presented to him and his 10 buddies. He was so drunk that he forgot that he had already paid. Also, this guy was a badass lawyer and he was gonna sue for something, and he kept telling me that I wasn't the real manager and that he wanted to speak to the person in charge. I was the only manager there. I pulled the bartender aside and asked about the bill. She confirmed that they had ordered almost an entire bottle's worth of Jaeger in shots, plus many pints. It got ugly and cops were called. Cops showed up and Mr. Badass literally ducked down and snuck out the door. One of my employees pointed this out to the cops. They went outside to speak to him. At the end, the cops said Mr. Badass had made the decision to go to jail for same sports bar, homecoming weekend in a college town. A guy walks in with 6 or 7 family members 5 minutes before kickoff and demands a table. Now, this is a top 25 ranked Big 12 school and we had people lined up outside the door when we opened 2 hours earlier. This douche canoe says that he's a doctor and we better give him a table. We told him that all tables were full and he could wait to see if one opened up. He loudly demanded that we make someone get up so his family could sit down. People are now watching this shit show and have forgotten about the game. He eventually leaves after speaking to our managers and district manager who was there because he knew how busy it would be. Dr. Duchkanu was so pissed that he left and filed a corporate complaint with the company. The owner called us and asked about it. When he got the story he just laughed. 5. Sports bar again. I had to jump in the kitchen one day to help out because we got slammed. I made a nacho appetizer that looked like it came off of a damned menu picture. It was perfect. I even had cooks and servers saying I was setting the bar too high. About 20 minutes later the server that ordered them came back with an empty plate and said, "Here is the nacho plate that you made." I was pretty proud and thought that I had done such a good job that the table had basically licked the plate clean. She then continued with, "He wants a refund because he didn't like them." A single man had eaten about 3 pounds and 50 pence of nachos, down to the last crumb, and then decided it wasn't good enough to pay for. He did not get a refund. I have more but I'll stop. Edit. Okay, I give. Here are some others. 6. I waited on a lot of famous people and a majority of them are really cool. The absolute worst people to wait on are the Joe Sixpacks of the world who have insecurity issues. The only autograph I ever asked for was Jenny Finch because she and her then fiancé came in on a slow weekday afternoon and we had a good conversation. 7. I waited on a girl who was attractive but obviously a lady of the night. She had 10 pounds of boob in a 5-pound bra. She was actually pretty cool and seemed really normal. She related a story to me that she had been with an NBA player who was visiting town. This was common since we were positioned about 2 blocks from an NBA arena. I actually became friends with a guy who played. Anyway, she said nothing was odd until he dropped his pants and she laughed because there was nothing she could do for him except a really expensive handy. Apparently he was large. She said it was basically a $600 arm workout. One night early in my customer service career, we were really busy and I was working in the kitchen. We were sweating like we were in a sauna and the tickets didn't stop coming in. The bartender decided that was the best time to come back to the window and tell us how to do our jobs because she didn't think the hoagie should be cut diagonally. I lost it. I remember saying get back behind the F-King bar where you belong. 30 seconds later the drunk lady who frequented the place was in the kitchen bitching at me about how I should shut my mouth and do my job. Apparently the bartender had gone to this wise woman with her tail off woe and said I was being very rude. I told the owner about it the next night and he said he would have thrown hot refried beans at her to get her out of the kitchen. In one place, we had just hired a new assistant manager and he was odd. This culminated one busy night when I went back to the prep area and he was on his cell phone. Nothing too odd, but then he suddenly turned his head, threw up on the floor, and went back the conversation. He stopped coming to work shortly after and some money was missing. 10. In the same place, we had another young, 23, female manager who had a drinking problem, to the point that her mother got her paychecks. There were many days that the kitchen staff would call me because they were locked out of the restaurant because she hadn't shown up to let them in. I was managing one day in a pair of gym shorts and a t-shirt because they had gotten me out of bed after closing the night before. She came in 3 hours late like it was no big deal. The killer fact here is that she and I both applied to manage at another place when they were hiring for one manager. They hired her. She let me hear about it whenever we saw each other. The other place was closed within 6 months. Oh man. Heroin and vodka makes me fuzzy on the inside. It's weird. Definitely try it. Not a waiter, but a reporter, and this is the only place I'll ever get close enough to proper context to tell this story, so I'm doing it. When I was completing my summer internship at a paper back home, I also took a course on travel writing. One of the assignments had us go into whatever city we were in, find locally owned restaurants and write about those places, what kind of food they had, what the place looked like, the sort of thing you'd see in a travel magazine. So I'm working on this assignment. Go to local Irish pub at like 3 PM on a Tuesday cause that's when I figure they would be the least busy. While I'm waiting on a manger to come talk to me, I'm sitting at the bar looking through the menu and I can't help but overhear the conversation going on at the table behind me. It's a guy, his girlfriend and 2 of their female friends. And one of the friends laments that her recent one-night stand would not take no as an answer for anal. She just didn't get the appeal. This began a more than 20-minute explanation from the girlfriend talking about how great anal is, why she prefers it to physics, how to prepare yourself for inserting a foreign object into your anus, some stories about leaky shit when you don't prepare correctly, what it's like to have cum in your ass versus your pussy. I learned a lot that day. Not really something I've overheard, but someone came into my cafe covered in blood once and got it all over the bathroom. Served him juice and a muffin on another day and he was yelling hello into his phone over and over, starting at a whisper with increasing levels of terror. Not a waiter, but I overheard guys about my age discussing what Bentley to buy. I thought they were just playing what I'd buy if I was rich. Then they had their meals and left in their Ferrari California. I wasn't planning on drowning my sorrows in dessert before that. Late to the game so this will get buried. Had a regular come in almost weekly. Ordered the same thing every visit. Except, he would alternate between his wife and kids, and his girlfriend. We started noticing when he would be sitting on the same side and making out with different women on different nights. I mean, hard to miss. You start to keep your head down and give that look of disapproval when you lock eyes. But it's none of your business and he tipped very well. Probably hush money. Eventually after a few months his wife caught on and stormed into the restaurant and straight to the table where the husband and his GF sat like she was hiding backstage on the set of Maury. He apologized, swore it would never happen again. It didn't for a while, but he had a new girlfriend and was pulling the same stuff after 2 months. You'd think he would find a new restaurant. The man loves his shrimp. Two guys, gay, I presumed, at my table, and one of them is complaining about the food and the other one says, "Oh, please, you've had much worse things in your mouth than that." Homo here, raised Catholic, currently non-practicing, and many of my friends are Catholic. I still do a few religious things, like pray, give up something for Lent, etc., but obviously not all of it. I was at a pizza place in a casino a few months back, eating with my friend while her boyfriend gambled. We get our orders, and she starts when she sees me about to eat a slice of pepperoni pizza. "Jordan, you can't eat meat. Today is Friday." It was during Lent. I stared at her for a long minute before saying, "I think on the list of things that God doesn't want me to put in my mouth, meat on a Lenten Friday is a distant second to cock." I expected her to recoil in surprise, but she kinda looked off for a moment, nodded, brow furrowing, and said, "Yeah, fair enough." Maybe a little off topic. I once had a table with a young couple who were on a date. They seemed to be doing fine. The dude got up to go to the restroom at the same time I strolled by to make sure they had everything they needed. "How is everything going?" "Good," I said with a sullen nod. She replied that they were on a blind date, but she wasn't into him. She liked the waiter much more than her date. I just happened to be throwing a party that night and did not miss the opportunity. Slipped her a flyer and went on with my business. I had a girlfriend and my only intention was to have another lady show up for the festivities. I arrived at my house later that night and sure enough, little miss don't like my date is there as well. My lady quickly put an end to any intentions this girl had for me. A couple hours later my buddy fucked her in the bathroom. Good times. I waited tables at a private club for a while, and I overheard lots of fun stuff. 1. Waited on an attorney and his client, who were discussing suing a doctor for malpractice and talking about how they were going to bleed him dry. That doctor happened to be my uncle. I hovered, took notes, and then called my uncle. 2. I also overheard a local developer explaining to the mayor and county executive that he planned to ignore the environmental regulations that hindered his project. He bragged about how he had the means to tie up the regulatory agency in litigation for years, which would force them to drop their case out of financial necessity. One night at the restaurant I was serving a woman's birthday dinner. She ordered a dessert and when I brought it to the table she said, "I'm turning 65. I said, "No way, you look amazing," and then her husband goes, "She better. I've paid enough for her plastic surgeries." In shock I looked over at the woman and she just nodded. I said, "Okay, happy birthday," and left. Waiter at a fairly nice restaurant. I was just seated with this smaller guy and a woman of eminent proportions. His wife leaves the table for the bathroom while he's ordering and just then another guy, supposing friend of his, walks up, asks where his better 2/3 was. Couldn't contain myself. Several years ago, I heard an old lady once loudly sing "Eeny Meeny Miny Mo, Catch-a-Renga" by the Toe to a small child at a table nearby one I was serving. Also, I'm black, not a waiter but a guest. With my family I was 14 at this time, at the Longhorn Steakhouse while being in Florida for vacation. Seated on the table next to us was a large Afro-American family. The waitress was a young petite white American girl woman who looked like she just started there. Every time she passed by, the family next to us were making allusions about how small the waitress ass is. Whenever they needed something they shouted, "American flatbread, bring us this, bring us that," to the point where the American flatbread went for the manager and the whole family was escorted out. If I am honest, I got a good laugh, but in hindsight it's very fucked up to be so disrespectful to the person serving you food. XPOST, not a waiter, but was told this story by a waitress on a lunch date. Rather fitting. She worked at a sushi place in Moscow for her last 2 years of high school. One couple came in and were seated. For the entirety of the meal it seemed like the guy was going on and on with some ratio nationalist spiel, barely allowing his dates to enter the conversation. It segued from belligerent monkey Americans to railing about the Caucasus and the ongoing insurgency there, Central Asians, and finally ended up with him deriding Japan and sushi, telling his date he took her out for what in his mind was a primitive, shitty type of meal. By the time she had made it to that section of the restaurant again, the girl was gone, and the guy asked for the bill, ended up tipping decently, by Russian standards. Not a waiter, but one time I got into a customer's car when it was still hooked up to Bluetooth. Random person on phone. Hey, did you do it, customer? I thought I told you not to call me on this number. Click. Edit. For clarification, the customer in question was sitting outside of the car, waiting for a service advisor. I don't know if he actually heard the guy on the line, but if you're familiar with BT systems in cars, they're really loud usually. I have so many questions. I'll clean my fanny. Was this in the UK? Trying to decipher which fanny you are referring to. In the US it means ass. I think either way it's an odd conversation to have at a restaurant. Yeah buddy, but could simply be the rude customer complaining about food, the dish being sent back and redone, and him informing the chef that the customer had eaten the new one. Not everything's dark and abysmal, especially if they value continuing to work in the industry. Not a waiter but a customer. One time I heard this guy come in to order something, when an old woman and her daughters walked in and started screaming at the guy for stealing her daughter's money and lying to her. He played it off and told the waiter to call the cops. The yelling lasted for 10 minutes until the cops showed up. One time I was waiting on nurses at the bar. They had just gotten off their shift and they always come to drink. After they had a few I hear them getting louder and talking about patients, and one of the guys tells the other nurses, "You're lucky they didn't look into that because you know we killed that guy." I was shocked. It was the craziest thing I ever said and he was very cold and nonchalant about it. Nurses are savages. So I was balls deep in this dude, right? And I reach around and this man has a boner. And I'm thinking to myself, is this guy gay? Just last night I was in the bathroom and two women were talking. I wasn't really paying attention until one of the women started crying and talking about how she didn't know if she was going to survive 2017. I didn't know if she was speaking literally or figuratively, but they obviously didn't know I was in there. It's fucked up because I was just sitting there thinking, fuck, I gotta get back to my table soon. Also, a year or so ago we had a server working there from Brazil. He was an American citizen, mind you. He was also very nice and very good at his job. This guy had a host of regulars within months of working there. He spoke good English, but with a fairly heavy accent. We are in a shared section one night together and I'm sweeping nearish to a table that he's been taking care of, all old white people. He walks away from the table after asking about something, and I hear one of the women exclaim about Muslims, and then the table erupts into a shitstorm of xenophobic rhetoric. I told my manager what happened and he seemed upset, but couldn't really do anything about it, until the server in question went back to the table and they requested another server because they didn't want to be waited on by an immigrant Muslim. My manager assigned a new server to them, but after their meal informed them that they would not be welcomed back. Besides the racist shit, he's not fucking Muslim. He's probably more Christian than you fuckwits. Edit. Another good one. This was first night on the floor at the restaurant I currently work at. The dinner rush has subsided and I'm helping a co-worker bus one of her tables. This was one of those booths that was in a corner, so the seat kind of wraps around the table. I am about to crawl over the seat to reach something, when I notice little splotches of blood. But not just splotches, little hoof marks of period blood from where this unfortunate woman had lifted herself up and slid over several times to divest herself from the booth. Little, cloven hoof stamps of period blood. Gross. Edit 2. Man, I keep thinking of good ones. This restaurant I work at has heavy metal salad plates and heavy glass cylinders on the table for holding candles. I once witnessed a top of women throw both of these things at each other. I was walking by their table as soon as it broke out. Let me emphasize this by saying that the restaurant was packed. Turns out, one of the women sneezed on her friend's salad and her friend had a meltdown. Or, at least that was the explanation of one of the women, who came back later to apologize. Removed. I heard the guy behind me say he enjoyed fucking little kids when I was like 14. Thankfully my dad was there. I didn't really understand it at the time.